Bulldog Hanover, the Bulldog does it again. Bulldog Hanover, Rocky Road Hanover, and then Tattoo Artist. It's Bulldog Hanover, 1:45 and 4. There it is, the fastest mile in harness racing history.
Hello, it's Bob Pandolfo. Welcome to Power Brush with Pandy. It's Sunday, August 3rd, 2025, the day after the Hambletonian at the Meadowlands. I was there yesterday. My lovely wife Marilyn came with me, and we were there with some friends. Very, great day of racing. The track was kind of tiring yesterday, which is great. The Meadowlands, they usually do keep it a little tiring for this big day. I thought the rail was actually kind of dull, which is good because this way the outside horses have an advantage, not necessarily an advantage, but a fair chance to get into the race. And it's not easy to go wire to wire. The outside paths I thought were preferred yesterday. A couple of things I want to talk about. Let's go right to the Hambletonian Oaks. And you can see here, Conversano. I picked this horse. Really interesting, the way this race set up. So, first of all, congratulations to the trainer, Juan Cano. I mean, this was by far the biggest win of his career as a trainer. It's tough to win a major trotting stakes race like this, a prestigious race. This is a $500,000 race, the Hambletonian Oaks. And it's tough to win it because you're going against these trainers who specialize with trotters. They have barns full of well-bred trotters. Tron, Smidgehammer, and the Wallen stable, Nancy Tatker. Linda Toscano, of course, has won a lot of major stakes races. Noel Daly, and here's Juan Cano, who's essentially a claiming trainer, and he's got mostly pacers. And he happened to get this Muscle Hill filly, and she just kept improving. Interesting thing about the race is that he had driver Andy McCarthy driving this horse all year long. But McCarthy had two fillies in this race that he had to choose, and he really had to go with Noel Daly because Noel Daly, he's won a lot of big races for Noel Daly. I believe they're probably good friends. I mean, it's certainly a good connection for him. So he had to take Miss Belmar over, this horse, Conversano. Even though Conversano looked like to me like the best filly in the race, like I said, I picked her, and the thing is, the way the track was playing yesterday too, she's a grinder, who's very tactical. You can do anything with her, and she's always coming on at the end, and that's the kind of horses you want in these big races, especially if the track's a little tired. Cano really got lucky too because he had given James McDonald a drive on a filly last week, and McDonald got her, finished second with her and got her qualified to race again this week. That's this filly, Giggling on the Beach. So she came back into Shady Daisy. So he was coming in from Canada, and Juan said to him, "Hey, do you want to drive Conversano?" So of course he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna. Oh, sure, And he said, "Look, if it's a Hambletonian day, and I have even one, decent driver, I'm coming down from Canada." But for Cano, this worked out great because McDonald is a premier driver. I mean, this is the leading driver in Canada, and he's been the leading driver now for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something like that. McDonald he's as good as it gets. I mean, he's smart. He's got great hands. He's great under pressure. He won, I think it was, 2 Breeders' Cup races last year, and he won the Meadowlands Pace last year. So he's starting, people are starting to recognize that, he's not just, winning races in Canada. He's dominant in Canada. And this guy, like I said, he's one of the premier drivers in the sport. To get him as a replacement for Andy McCarthy, another premier driver, was just a stroke of luck that, they had that connection. And he put a perfect drive in this horse. A filly here, Delaney Hanover, who is, probably going to, be someone to watch. I thought she'd probably finish second here or win. To me, it looked like between the 6 and the 5. But she got a terrible trip. I mean, she got stuck behind poor cover. She had to go 4 wide. She finished strong. So, Wall Spear, though, Tron did a really good job with this horse. He got her to the lead. He rated the pace beautifully, and she managed to hold on for the place. The interesting thing about Miss Belmar, I didn't like Miss Belmar here because, mean, I put her third, but last week, what happened with Miss Belmar, and let's just take a quick look at this. Here. Miss Belmar was, 0 for 7 last year, but she was racing well. And you could see that this year, she had to make a step forward, and she did. She started to improve, and then she really, turned in a nice race in the Tompkins. But then in the Hambletonian Oaks eliminations last week, she's got a 2-lane lead here. It doesn't show it here, but she got wobbly gated right nearing the wire, and she, fortunately, Andy McCarthy was able to keep her on stride and stay up. But I didn't like what happened there because she doesn't break. She's not a breaker, and all of a sudden she got wobbly gated, and that's usually a bad sign. And I don't think, if it wasn't for the connection, I don't think Andy would have taken her here. But he, like I said, he had to take her because Noel Daly has a great reputation. Great relationship with Noel Daly. So what happened in this race is, Miss Belmar broke, and again, not hard to predict because that was not a good sign last week. So then again, congratulations to McDonald, congratulations to Cano, huge win for him. So let's go to the Hambletonian now. Hambletonian. Now, this was another interesting driver change thing. You had, 2 big driver change situations in both of these major stakes races yesterday. So Dexter Dunn, who's the leading driver in the United States, and in terms of purses, since he's come into the country, he's been the leading driver in the sport because he does very well in these big races. But he had driven Maryland, last year's 2-year-old champion trotter, and Super Chapter. So this was really fascinating. In the Hambletonian, you could see that Maryland last year, 6 for 9, over $1 million, right? This year, 0 for 4. But with 4, good placings. But meanwhile, he's driving Super Chapter, and Super Chapter, who was a good 2-year-old last year, matured this year, and this is the thing. Maryland was a precautious 2-year-old. This is what happens a lot of times. They don't, some horses don't improve as much because they're so good at 2. And that's what happened with Maryland. She's a little faster than she was last year. There's no question about that. But she didn't develop as much as some of these other horses who weren't as precautious. And this is in the case of Super Chapter, this colt just came into his own. I don't know, did I call Maryland? If I call Maryland a she, I apologize. But Maryland didn't, he was, the top 2-year-old colt last year. And, like I said, he didn't develop as much. Super Chapter did. Super Chapter just kept improving. And the thing is with Super Chapter, not only was he winning, but he's winning easily. But Dexter Dunn took Maryland. Now, I thought this was very surprising. I'll show you how I picked the race and some of my comments. So I like Maximus Mieres, who was improving. I'll talk about him in a minute. But I was thinking Super Chapter 8 to 5. Then I said maybe 7 to 5. I ended up making him 6 to 5 on my line. Probably should have been 7 to 5, 8 to 5. Maryland, I had second choice. The bettors, though, made Maryland the 3 to 2 favorite. And Super Chapter went off a 3 to 1. So the bettors must have thought, well, Dexter Dunn took this one, so that must be the better one. But it didn't make any sense. I firmly believe that Super Chapter should have been 7 to 5, 8 to 5 here, maybe even 6 to 5. And Maryland should have been 3 to 1. It just didn't make any sense. Maryland hadn't won a race this year. Super Chapter's been winning easily every race. So I thought Dexter Dunn, hey, look, he makes the right call 99 out of 100 times. He's the top winning driver in the sport. But this time, I thought he made a mistake. He took the wrong horse. Now, he talked it over with, this great trainer, Marcus Melander. And, I guess Melander and him talked it over and said, I think Maryland's sitting on a big race. I'll tell you why I didn't think Maryland would win this race, though. This third race back, the Dancer, this was a disappointing race for Maryland. He had finished second at Vernon Downs in these 2 races, including the Zieg. And then, he's 4-5 here, and I'm like, well, this, I even wrote in my picks. I picked him, and I said, this is the race. He's going to win this race. He didn't win, and he should have won. I mean, this was a race he should have won. It was his third off a layoff. It was a field that looked like it was right in. It just looked like a field. He's going to beat this field. When a horse disappoints like that, that to me was a red flag. Then he comes back in the elimination, and again he races good, but he didn't win. And he got beat. It was a fast race. I was a little concerned too. I was like, maybe this race is going to take something out of him because he was first over here, and he's battling to the wire. It was a pretty tough trip. Super Chapter, just breezed in his elimination. So to me, very interesting that he took Maryland. So what happened was Super Chapter got the pocket trip behind Gold Dog. Yannick Gingras had picked up the drive, so he decided to stay in the pocket all the way, and he got out too late. He got as Gold Dog started to tire. By the time Super Chapter was able to angle out, he lost all his momentum. And then Nordic Catcher, who went first over for Aquay Swanstep, he was able to power to the front. If Super Chapter had gotten out early, this would have been like a blanket finish between these two. I mean, one of them would have probably won by a nose or a head, either Super Catcher or Nordic Catcher or Super Chapter. It would have been really close. As it was, Nordic Catcher was able to hang on by a length. Super Chapter was coming on. He was coming on quickly. So, you have to give a lot of credit to Swanstedt. I interviewed Swanstedt when he first came to this country years ago. I think it was like, 8-10 years ago. He's now got 3 Hambletonian wins. He's a master horseman. When I interviewed him, I knew this guy is going to be huge in this country because he came in here. He was ready to roll. He bought a farm. He put his own training tracks in. And I mean, he has a soft surface there that he trains them on. And he trains them for stamina, and his horses, boy, they finish. And then you get into these big days, he takes the shoes off. He usually takes the shoes off all his good trotters when it's a major stakes race, and they go even faster. And he's a master at getting them gradually into form and then peaking in the big races. Breeders' Crown, Hambletonian. These are the races. I mean, he's one of the best in the history of the sport that I've ever seen in major stakes races with trotters. I mean, one of the greatest of all time. And he's a great money driver. It's funny because sometimes I hear people criticize his driving. I mean, the guy's like money in the bank in these races. I mean, he's got nerves of steel. He always makes almost always makes the right move. I mean, occasionally he's had a couple bad drives in all the years I've been watching him, but they all do. I've seen every great driver in the sport have drives I thought, in a major race, I thought, what the heck are you doing? Actually, most of the time, these guys, like Dexter Dunn and Gingras and Tetrick and all these guys, most of the time they make the right move. But Swanstedt, great under pressure, great horseman, one of the all-time. For guys who were trainer drivers, I would put him right up there with like a William Horton. This is a master horseman. As far as Maryland, he raced okay, but he just wasn't good enough. And I mean, he had cover from the winner. I mean, and he raced okay, but these two horses, Nordic Catcher and Super Chapter, had a lot more trot. The other horse that I like, Maximus Mieres, I thought Zeron would leave with her, but the way the track was playing, he decided to come off the pace. He had, again, I'm saying her. I thought Zeron would leave with him, and Maximus Mieres did close stoutly last week, so Zeron probably figured, maybe I'll get a good cover trip. He didn't have really good cover because the 3-horse was kind of flat here. So he really had no chance. I think it would have been better if he left, but Zeron's a very good money driver. He's very good in these big races. He's won, I think, 2 Hambletonians. So he made a decision to race off the pace, and it just didn't. The pace just wasn't fast enough, and he didn't get good cover. But I still think Maximus Mieres, though, will be a horse that will be heard from. I think he's only raced 3 times this year. Super Chapter is still going to be a force, and Nordic Catcher. we'll see what happens with Maryland. But like I said, the other horses have just advanced so much, and that happens. It's funny too. Ake Swanstead had one Hambletonian that got away from him. He's had 3 Hambletonians in 8 tries, right? Since he's coming in this country. He had a horse named Six Pack, he was in the Hambletonian. On the final turn, I thought he's loaded. There was a fast pace, and I thought Six Pack is going to blow these horses away. I can't remember what year that is, but it wasn't that long ago. And what happened is the horse in front of him broke, and Ake was a split second too late to pull his horse, and Six Pack broke, and that was kind of the one that got away because I think Ake would have had 4 Hambletonians if that horse didn't break in front of him. He was just about to go wide. The pace was set up, and Six Pack was a fast horse. But it kind of redeemed him today yesterday in the Hambletonian, because Six Pack's the sire of this Hambletonian winner. Six Pack, a really nice sire. Really, he was a fast horse. And so congratulations to, Swanstead again. What a great horseman. And yeah, look, it was exciting. A big crowd there yesterday. Beautiful weather. So we really had a great time. I wanted to show you one more thing before I go. For those of you who follow my picks for the Meadowlands, I put my line on these horses. Now, in the 13th race yesterday, and I want to show you, how you could use my line. So this was a sire stake final for 2-year-olds, right? It looked like it was between Diabolic Hill and Apex, but these are 2-year-olds, they're lightly raced horses. So if you look at my comments, so I picked a favorite. I said, he showed me something last week. He wired his field. Then I said Apex is 2 for 2 with lots of potential. Then I said Ardone and Am Cronus are both promising, and either could step up and show sharp improvement here. Now look at the odds I made. Ardone 6 to 1, right? This was like one of the best bets of the day if you were smart enough to to look at the odds, right? Because as it turns out, Diabolic Hill came up short, but he raced good. He went first though. Apex, who was the horse to beat, got the cover trip from the favorite, but then Ardone, left in 27 to 1 with Scotty Zeron in the bike, one of the top money drivers, and he just missed. Exactly came back 64-60. I never would have expected that. 27 to 1. So again, this is how you use my line. This line is not what I think the horses are going to go off at. This is what I think their chances of winning are, right? So if I make a horse 6 to 1, here I'll show you how to, on my Trot Picks website, I'll show you what that means. You go down to, if a horse is 6 to 1, that means that he's got about a 15% chance of winning the race. This is the odds. So that's what I think. I think that the race is run 100 times, he'll win the race like 15, 16 times. Out of that race. So 6 to 1 odds would be true odds. But this horse will have a 27 to 1 odds, which means that the bettors thought that he had like about a 2 or 3% chance of winning that race, right? Which is not true, because he had been showing that he not only had ability and potential, but he was improving. So 6 to 1, and that was a really nice exacta in the 13th race, and that's how you use my line. If you go back to my line, by the way, in the Hambletonian, like I said, I just want to explain too that when I made Super Chapter the favorite, right? Again, I'm not saying I think the public was going to bet him down to the favorite. I thought he should have been the favorite because I thought he was the horse to beat, and he was the best trotter in the race. And I still think he's the best trotter in the race, by the way. Nordic Catcher might be just as good, but he got a better. Nordic Catcher got a little bit better trip because Super Chapter got boxed in there for a while. But if they raced again next week, the two of them, I'd probably make them both like 8 to 5. They're in. They're both really good. But that's, my line is based on what I think the horse's chances are. So anyway, it was a heck of a nice, have a good Hambletonian. Here's the Nordic catcher here. Congratulations. I thank you for tuning in. I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. It's free. That's really important to me. And lots of luck in your racing and betting. And thanks for tuning in.